had dropped off.
Okay, so it's like we see, the thing is, this is the one about attachment. We want it to continue, or we're watching the process, we're watching the building of this job, of this building, we're watching the building, you know, the making of that pot, the making of a house, the making of a relationship. The things all work together. You work really hard, all the causes come together. It's marvelous, it's working. And then, so because it's all working, and because we've got it all mapped out, like this is what's interesting, you know, like she said, we will be together until we're 80. Let's say you're building a building. Well, to build a building, you need a plan. You need a brilliant, perfectly executed plan. You need to have the logic to know that all the pieces are in place. You can be confident, absolutely confident. But what happens is, grasping at something as permanent, it's like we become overconfident, but all the things are perfect. Every single cause is there. It's all coming together. Everything's ticking all the boxes. It's going to plan. So then we make this, because we're attached to it. And it's so subtle, this attachment, it catches us unawares because we desperately, hungrily want it to happen. We assume it will happen. I mean, so far, so good. When she was in that relationship at that time, she said, we will be together till we're 80. Everything was working beautifully. You could be making that building. Everything is going to plan. And then, so then we're thinking, well, if Buddha's telling us all of a sudden things can change, then we can't have confidence in anything. Well, in a sense, you're right. We can't. And I think our own experiences tell us this repeatedly. So what's the answer to this? Because, you know, it's not, I remember one person on one show, I'm not on a show, am I? It's a teaching. I feel like I talk on a show. That sounds naughty, isn't it? I'm not doing a show, okay? I'm not what is it? One of those funny people. People tell me I'm funny. Maybe I am. Anyway, never mind. But she said she lives in fear every day that her husband, whom she adored, would die. She said, what am I going to do? She said, try and please tell me how I can live in the moment. I said, well, forget about living in the moment. Just recognize the reality that he will die. And this is very shocking to us. It seems like brutal, you know. It doesn't mean he'll die today, but it means he could die today. Because even though there he is a thoroughly healthy person, meaning you're building this building, everything is perfect. All the causes are together. Nothing is wrong. You tick all the boxes scientifically, you know, every way possible. You can say everything is perfect. So when we get overly confident and think, well, because it's perfect now, it will be perfect tomorrow or the next day. But if you're not clairvoyant, you cannot see that an unseen event won't come along like a storm. You know, like in this case of this relationship, a new woman came along and upset the apple cart, you know. So this is the thing about being clairvoyant. This is why it's interesting working with someone, these holy beings. I mean, the Buddha says, we got the power, we have the power to develop our mind to the point where we remove the obstacles to the point where we can see the past and see the future. And so we can then do extra things that might not be evident in the face of the thing to be successful, you know. I mean, for example, there's some people I know who are involved in involved in an investment, a big investment, you know, and it looks like it's really going well. All the things are in place, all the bricks and everything are in place. But there's Lama Zopa. Suddenly he did, you know, the people told me that he suddenly looked at the event, and then he came up with these outrageously ridiculous practices that to do to help the event be successful, to help the investment be successful. Now, if you're not clairvoyant, you wouldn't see that, you wouldn't know that, you wouldn't see likely dangers. And that's the power of these holy beings, you know. This is the level that we can accomplish by doing extra practices, extra things to shore up all the causes, to ensure that they do stay in place, that the obstacles are removed, and in fact it will be successful. So he's all these extra pujas. He even had to ring one monastery especially for them to do this special 3-day thing to help remove the obstacles to the success of this investment, you know. So it's like, I mean, this is the thing with when you have clairvoyance. This is for example, the story I always tell about Lama Yeshe. Helping my friend Harry years ago was at Kopan Monastery, helping one of the monks there. This is a kind of another type of story, but it's indicating the wisdom you need to really be clear about these things, you know. This young Sherpa monk was sick, and so Harry found a doctor for him. Well, then he told Lama Yeshe is his guru, so he told Lama Yeshe that he'd found a doctor. And Lama just kind of dismissed it and said, it's okay, he doesn't need a doctor. So Lama trusted Harry trusted Lama's wisdom. So the monk, he didn't get the doctor, and Harry could observe that the monk got sicker and sicker and sicker. And Lama didn't seem to be doing anything, but Harry trusts Lama. So then the monk eventually went back up to his family. He was a Sherpa up in the mountains, and he died. Well, I mean, that sounds quite shocking. It sounds like Lama Yeshe didn't care, you know. It sounds like Lama Yeshe didn't care about this monk. This is another type of wisdom that would seem, you know, that he didn't do things to make sure the monk lived long. So, in fact, Lama Lundup, the abbot of Kopan, said to Harry, well, what's going on is, of course, Lama Yeshe has clairvoyance. I mean, clairvoyance is a low-level realization. We don't, in modern scientific world, it sounds hilarious. It sounds mystical. It sounds like science fiction. But, you know, as we know very well, even well before the Buddha, Eugenia's Indians investigated the mind and discovered this marvelous potential to access subtle level of mind with single pointed concentration, and to know that you can observe the past and the future and things that the gross level of consciousness cannot cognize. You Indians invented this well before the Buddha. So this is a fundamental part of what Buddha is saying we can cultivate as we grow. And basically, we can't really begin to help sentient beings until we have got clairvoyance. And this is a perfect example. So the fact is, as Lama Lundup said about Lama Yeshe, because of his clairvoyance, and of course, because he had enormous wisdom and he had immense compassion, he only wanted the best for this monk. He could see clearly the karma this monk created, you know, countless lives ago, that was causing this illness. He could also see that if he'd gotten a doctor, he'd fixed it, he could have had a longer life and would have been fine. But Lama could also see with his clairvoyance that if he'd gotten the doctor and had been better and had a long life, he would not have purified the karma that caused the sickness, and that in fact next life would have been much worse. So by having the sickness, by dying young, he purified all that particular karma, and his next life was fantastic. Now, I mean, that's shocking, isn't it? Who has that level of wisdom? And that's the point about, you know, I mean, especially if you know these lamas, I mean, especially someone like Lama Zopa is endlessly advising people to do this practice and that practice and read this sutra and do that particular thing and that fire puja, build that statue. I mean, it can sound like superstition. What's that got to do with a successful investment? What's that got to do with a successful relationship? Because they've got the wisdom to see the various subtle causes from way, way back, and can see the likely obstacles coming in the future, that if you do this and this and this, you can remove them. So in reality, the view is very scientific, but scientific within the framework of Buddha's view of the mind and Buddha's view of the potential of the mind to see reality. So the logic is there. It's just we've got to take a different framework. That's all, you know. So anyway, this is a huge thing. I mean, this is a really huge thing in the Buddhist one. We know if you're a student of Lama Zopa, someone like Lama Zopa, you're going to be getting these practices all the time. Do this, do that. Why? Because they look at you, they see exactly what is necessary. They see exactly what is good, what is bad. They see exactly how to help you, you know, navigate this life of ours, putting all the right causes and conditions together, you know, so that in fact you might get a long life and the relationship might last and the building might come up successfully and the investment might be successful. In other words, there's subtle levels of reality. And this is the one that's very hard for us to see because we only see at a certain level, you know. This is why it's marvelous to hear about these, you know, these techniques that you Indians have invented that are central to the Buddhist techniques that enable us to access these subtle levels of mind that can see phenomena, can cognize phenomena that the grosser level of conceptuality and the grosser level of sensory consciousness simply are not capable of cognizing. This is what the Buddha is saying. This is the Buddha's teachings, you know. So anyway, here we are, example. Because we're attached to the outcome of something, desperately attached, and attachment is our main disease, Buddha says. It can be very subtle. We can have masses of good qualities. We can have masses of compassion and kindness and intelligence. But until we're highly advanced, until we realize emptiness, we're going to have attachment. And attachment is this emotional hunger that over-exaggerates all the delicious things and blinds us from seeing things at a subtler level, you know, seeing the dangers, in other words. Like if that woman who was in love with that husband when she said we'll be together until we're 80, maybe other people were already observing problems in their relationship because she was blinded by attachment. We can be blinded by attachment to the outcome of that event, that investment, that building, that whatever it might be. We simply can't see the reality, you know, even at a fairly gross level, because we get overexcited, you know, we get overexcited. So it's a hard one, this, especially with impermanence, because like this, this woman, what we tend to think is, well, if he's going to leave me, if we won't be together until we're 80, and if he could leave me tomorrow, then our first instinct is to say, well, why bother? Why not just sit back and wait for him to leave me? Why bother living life, we would think. And this is a really tough one. We can't hear this properly, because that's the other extreme, is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. The reality is, once we realize impermanence, even to some degree, it's sort of, we integrate it into everything we do. There becomes an implicit understanding that whatever we do, things change. They indeed might change for the better. There's no saying they might change for the worse, but they do change millisecond by millisecond, or at a grosser level, like a husband leaving you or a new husband coming along when you least expected it, A good thing can happen. This is the other thing. So this is quite a profound teaching, and it's one of the first ones the Buddha gave. And this prepares us beautifully for the subtler understanding of how there's no intrinsic nature, how everything has no intrinsic nature, how everything is empty of inherent existence, which is the real wisdom we need to get. So we've got to go one step at a time. It's incremental, But the mind of grasping at things as unchanging is huge. And this is another point, another aspect of this. Let's say the person who believed they'd be together till they're 80, and the attachment to this kept her buoyant and excited. And then what happens when he does leave her for a younger version, which is what happened, and what will happen? The bubble will burst and she will crash to despair. That investment that you believe will be successful, that building that you know is going to be perfect, suddenly collapses, or something terrible happens, or you get sued, or things always happen out of the blue. We know that. So what happens then? Well, then naturally, when the bubble burst and he left her for a younger version, she crashed to despair. And this is the tragedy now. Now, this is how we all do it. Now, she believed that was permanent, that would never change. And that's why we kill ourselves, because you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's the tragedy. When good things happen, when good things change, we now think the bad thing is permanent. We now think it will never change. Look at the despair people experience when bad things happen, because the good thing stopped, which you thought was impermanent, which we thought would last forever. We catch ourselves continuously. So the point is, all Buddha is saying is, when we become in touch with reality at these subtler levels, no matter what happens, you won't lose the plot. You won't lose the plot, You won't go crazy. You won't despair, because you know it's reality. It doesn't mean, see, the thing is too, it doesn't mean there's no logic to these things. We think things are good luck and bad luck. And this is why, like in the world of science and the world of building and the world of botany, which is the world of science, all the laws are perfect. They're all logically proved. If you put this seed in the ground and get this temperature, weather, and this amount of water, and we can be quite subtle and even quite nuanced about it, you can definitely guarantee you'll get that flower. That we do not, there's no argument about that. The laws do follow. They are logical. But all Buddha's saying is there are subtler laws at play, subtler laws. It's not hit and miss. It's not mystical. It's not surprising. It's just that we can't see those laws. This subtler law of interdependence, the subtler law of impermanence, at these levels that we don't factor in. And of course, the law of karma, which we absolutely do not factor in. This is why we need, holy beings who are the examples for us of what we can become, who got the wisdom to see what is necessary, to make things successful. In other words, they can give us the subtler advice, the things and practices and things we should do in order to really ensure that things will go according to our well-laid plans. Nothing wrong. It's marvelous to have this, So impermanence, yeah, I'm saying several things here. But impermanence, things change. So the result of this isn't that you become indifferent and nihilistic. Ah, well, things change, why bother? No, not at all. All Buddha's saying is, the more we get in touch with reality at the most simple conventional level to the most subtle level, this is his method for getting happy. It's as simple as that. I mean, it's almost embarrassingly simple to say this, that the reason we suffer is, to whatever degree, we are not in sync with reality. We're living in la la land. So the more we get in touch with reality, the more we stay sane. And when the bad things do happen, we will not lose the plot and we can handle it. And we will understand the causes. And then we will know the solution to prevent it in the future. So Buddha's approach is utterly scientific, utterly logical. It's just that it's a logic in a framework that is much, is not the framework we tend to have in the physical, in the materialist world, So getting in touch with reality, that's the bottom line. What time is it? What time do we start? Oh yeah, okay. So now look, 30 minutes gone already. Gone like a dream. 30 minutes, you see, it's impermanent suddenly, but we fit a lot in the 30 minutes. Okay, ask me some questions now, come on.
Aman's internet was disconnected for some reason, and so if you
okay.
could hand in.
No, one more thing I want to say, one more thing. Let me just say one more thing, just to be clear about this business. We can understand that things are impermanent, but it's easy to fall into the trap, especially in that relationship when everything was going beautifully and the husband was in love with her and she was in love with him and the kids were happy, the jobs were there. You can get lulled into, oh, everything's okay. You kind of relax, everything's really permanent after all. No, things are changing second by second. Millions of new conditions are coming into place. Never take it for granted. Never just sit on your laurels. Continually understand that things change and know, though, that you can have an influence. This is what my example about that, advice that Lama Zopa can give you if you're doing that particular investment, He can see skillfully the things that you can do to increase the likelihood it will be successful. Marvelous. This is marvelous, marvelous. So don't ever take things for granted is really a very good way of saying stop seeing things as permanent and stop seeing things as inherent, never take things are a work in progress there and new conditions can come along. This is why clairvoyance is so powerful, because the lamas can, sort of like if you think of a garden. I love the example of a garden. Let's say I don't know anything about botany and Carol is a brilliant gardener and I know nothing about the law of botany. And I see an acre of ground that looks like it's bare. And she will proceed to tell me that exactly how it will look in 5 years. Now, we know, if you know botany, you can do that. You can predict, given the laws of botany, if they all behave beautifully, you will be able to predict your garden. We call that science. And I don't know there's such a thing called botany. And I will say, wow, Carol, you're clairvoyant. And she'll say, no, of course I'm not clairvoyant. I just know the laws of botany. And we even know even the ordinary laws of botany. Forget about the law of impermanence and more subtle laws of... What, darling? What happened?
No, my internet got disconnected and the whole session kind of suffered, but we are okay now. Sorry for this.
Okay, all the people coming back here. So, even... we can see this even relatively, even though say you don't have the law of karma, you don't understand clairvoyance, you don't understand the more subtler causes from past lives and the more subtle results in future. Even if you don't have that view, we do know the more you know about botany, the more certain you can be of the likely results. So impermanence is not denied by that. Impermanence is not chucking the baby out of the bathwater and saying, oh, well, no one knows. That's superstition. That's nihilism. It's not like that at all. It's just that all I'm saying is, the way the Buddha would see the universe, is he's got more subtle laws at play. The law of karma, the laws of the much more subtle laws of karma, and and in other words, all the causes that are more subtle than the evident ones that a botanist would have. That's the point about the Buddhist approach. It's the same logic. It's scientific. It's all provable and knowable. It's just subtler levels. So okay, now ask me your questions, please.
So guys, so the internet got disconnected. So whatever questions you had in the chat, we also lost them. So if you could send them again or just raise your hand.
Elroy Fernandez, how can we see things?
Perfect. Yeah.
What's Elroy's question, please?
So Elroy is asking, how can we see things as they are? Well,
that's what the whole Buddhist path is about. That's what I'm indicating. You need to study Buddhism to see what Buddha says reality is. You can hear what Buddha says reality is, like you can hear, what Einstein says reality is, but you can't just memorize it. You've got to learn it for yourself and prove it for yourself. So basically, if you want to see the way things exist according to the Buddha, you've got to obviously study Buddhist views, don't you? If you want to see the way things exist according to Einstein, you have to study Einstein's views. You have to study them. That's the answer, sweetheart. Yes, Abelardo, talk to me.
Thank you very much. I have an ongoing doubt. Babies, when they come into the world, we are told, science tells us that they need a secure attachment to thrive.
Yes, I understand.
If not, they have traumas.
Yes.
And at what point does attachment cease to be a good thing for a healthy child or person, and becomes something we have to liberate ourselves from?
I do. It's a really good point. I think the key issue here is the definition. I think the way we use that term in modern psychology is a very different definition from Buddha's, and that's the distinction that we must make. There may be some similar understandings in the term that you're using it, but the Buddha's view of attachment is actually, the Buddhist view of the mind, it's very clear distinction. There are these hundreds and thousands of states of mind that we have, but the Buddhist model of the mind is very clear in distinguishing between neurotic, I-based, fear-based, delusional, very disturbing states of mind that are the source of our own suffering and are the source of why we harm others. And his findings are that we can rid our minds of these and that these are the problem. And then there's a distinction between those and the other states of mind, which we all recognize also. So the first category, you would say attachment fits into this one: anger, jealousy, depression, despair, low self-esteem, all the unhappy emotions. And don't hear it in a moralistic sense. Buddha's found from his own experience, his analysis of these states of mind, that they're not valid insofar as they distort and exaggerate things. It's a very specific approach the Buddhist view has. So then you have to distinguish between those and the so-called valid, reasonable, useful, productive states of mind that are the source of our own happiness and our ability to benefit others. And they're called love, intelligence, compassion, kindness, generosity, caring, forgiveness, all these other qualities. So in a simple sense, these words we're very familiar with. But the Buddhist analysis is quite subtle. And so this word attachment is a bit of a minefield for us, because what you're saying is exactly correct. And Buddha would totally agree. I'll use the words consciously for Buddhism, that you would say anybody to grow up needs a loving mother, a good father, stability, kindness, usefulness, a discipline in their daily life, expectation they'll get breakfast in the morning. Absolutely, we all need that. But also we can see if even lots of children don't get it. It's true, isn't it? No matter how hard you try, some mothers who are so poor can't guarantee that they'll have breakfast for their child in the morning. So one way Buddha's saying is because you can't be certain that all the things you want will happen, it doesn't mean you still shouldn't aim for it. So of course you're absolutely correct. We all need that. We all want that to have a stable and then become a reasonable human being and grow up. But the finer point that Buddha's making is, if we analyze what he means by attachment, is this unreasonable, over-exaggerated expectation of everything going perfectly. So let's just say, and because as you know, Buddha suggests we come into this life from past lives, we come into this life programmed. So you could argue there could be one child who maybe because of their advanced practice from a previous life doesn't have much of this unhappy attachment, but has an unhappy mother, an unhappy childhood, but because they're flexible, they don't suffer so much. Whereas another child who has masses of attachment from the Buddhist perspective, but has wonderful parents, but is never happy, is never satisfied, always gets angry and upset. So it's not just the external conditions that are the problem, it's what's in the mind. I mean, that's a longish answer, but are you seeing my point?
Yeah. It's still tricky for me.
Yeah, go on.
Because it said that in order for a child to be able to thrive and have trust in himself and the world,
exactly.
Those first experiences of life of a secure, stable attachment are vital.
Yes, of course. I agree with you. But would you? Okay, finish your point. Sorry, forgive me.
And it seems that for many of us as adults, that need still continues deep down inside. We're still conditioned to think that way.
Okay, good. So nothing wrong. So put it this way, nothing wrong with that. But have you noticed that it doesn't always come the way we expect? And have you noticed how we suffer terribly when things do go wrong? Have you noticed that?
Of course.
So this is the finer point. The Buddha's point is this. You can have a person, like I think I mentioned briefly, I'll say it again. You could have a person who, let's say, doesn't have too much of the emotional neurotic attachment, but Therefore, that person's more flexible. Even as a child, that person will be more flexible and won't suffer so badly when things do change. That's the point that Buddha's making, because we know that no matter how, we all need that certainty, but some people can have that in bucket loads, but have a lot of unhappiness in their own mind. And no matter how certain, how much the parents are good, they can become really neurotic, unhappy people. So all I'm saying is we've got to factor in what goes on in the mind, not just the external condition. That's the main point that Buddha's making.
Okay, thank you.
In other words, suffering people come from wonderful environments, and very lovely human beings come from terrible environments. And the key difference is what's in their minds. That's the point, the Buddha's point. You're not wrong in your statement, but that's the Buddha's point. It's a finer point to put on it.
I would have also thought that as a child develops and his or her discriminatory capacity, the mental qualities thrive, then he can discriminate better what's a healthy, what's a non-healthy set of
that's the
expectations.
ideal. That's the total ideal. But we can also see some people don't ever seem to grow up, do they? When even until they're 90, they're still pretty miserable. So you're absolutely correct. You're totally correct. You're totally correct. And that can't be demanded of the child at the beginning, but even what's in the mind, even as a child, the Buddha would say, can be different from one child to the next based on what they brought with them. That's the finer point. But you're absolutely right. And then eventually, no matter how bad or good our life has been, if we're going to learn from our experiences, we're going to be learning these truths. We're going to learn that things don't always come the way we want. And we're going to learn from that. If we're intelligent, we can learn. That's a simple way of putting it, isn't it? That's what growing up is, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Yes, Samuel.
Hello.
Yes.
So understand, how does the fact that things end help to destroy the extra deliciousness we add?
Sorry, say that again. Start again. What?
Okay. So I understand, how does the fact that things end help us deal with attachment?
I don't understand the question. I'm so sorry. And I can't
I'll
hear
finish.
it so well. Yeah.
I understand how the fact that things end help us to destroy the extra deliciousness. Okay.
I don't understand the question. I don't get it.
So Venerable, so Samuel is asking that the fact
No,
that
I'll
the
ask
things are
you.
impermanent.
I'll type it.
Okay,
sure.
as you would. Let him say it himself. Meanwhile, Adriana, why don't you tell me your question? I'll answer Samuel's in a minute. Adriana, what's your question, darling? Unmute, sweetheart. Unmute, darling. Unmute. There we go. There we go. Yes, darling. What's your question?
The question is, how can I lead my spiritual practice with my ordinary life? Because studying and follow the teachings says the 10 noble virtues actions.
What,
and so
I don't understand. What?
When I talk with someone, I don't want to talk because I feel, oh, I thought this. No, I don't. Maybe I stay quiet and apart because I don't want to.
What's this got to do with impermanence?
The impermanence? I'm sorry.
The topic. Is there anything about impermanence? No. But ask your question again. But what's the general question you asked me, darling? Say it again, please.
To make a mistake, to danger someone, and if I'm practicing and to them, not to be good to someone.
I don't understand the question, darling. I'm so sorry, Adriana. If you could perhaps write it down. I don't
Adriana,
understand.
do you want to write it in the chat, and I will help it to clarify it for Venerable?
Good, darling.
Yeah.
Yes, now Samuel again. Has he asked his question? Has he written it down, please? Read it to me.
Sure. So Samuel is asking that I understand how the fact that things will end will help us.
I do not hear the question. Please say it again, the question exactly.
So he's saying that I understand how the fact that things end help us
Understands. Stop. He understands
how
the fact that,
like how things are impermanent, how things will finish, that will destroy the flavor of that thing, like because the things finish, things end.
I don't understand the question.
Maybe I will understand that question and then clarify it for you, but till then we could take Christine's question, maybe Venerable.
Okay, go on, somebody else. Christine, sweetheart, talk to me.
Good morning, Venerable.
Hello,
Thank you
Christine.
for answering my question.
Good, darling.
It's good to see you.
Good, yes.
My question comes from something that you said a few minutes ago, where here we get comfortable within our home life of spouse and children and just doing everyday things that we're doing.
We take
And
things for granted. That's right. We rest on our laurels. They happen nicely. You wake up every morning. We tend to take things for granted, and we're not in touch
Absolutely.
with vivid awareness that things are changing moment by moment. So yes.
So when we are sitting comfortable in that, what can we do to actively make sure that we're not taking it for granted?
Well, it's one step at a time. It's just becoming very familiar with this fact that things actually, even though things feel permanent every day. I wake up in the same bed with the same husband, the same breakfast. It feels, we lull ourselves into believing it's solid and permanent, but just by knowing it's not, by every day analyzing, every day looking at things, how they're changing moment by moment, every day not taking for granted, every day knowing, for example, you don't know how long you're going to live. You know, your husband could die tomorrow. I could die tomorrow. So you kind of have to alert yourself to a wake-up call. And then when it is good, you think this is great. It's impermanent, but I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to keep sowing lots of good seeds in my mind so I can continue to have good things in the future. And the other reasoning is massive, which is understanding karma. Understanding if you have got a good life, you've got to look at the causes of it. What are the causes of this good life? It's not just some gift from heaven. This is a fruit of my generosity, of my virtue, of my non-harming, of all my past virtuous actions. So when you realize it's quite fragile, you know, and it could change at any moment, you keep creating more causes to get more of the same every day. So you ensure, in other words, it's like looking at your beautiful garden and you forget that you're supposed to water the garden every day. The flowers will die. You've got to keep nourishing the fruits, growing more fruits, adding more virtue every single day. That's what the learning is when you realize that things are impermanent, changing moment by moment. It's a dynamic work in progress, in other words, and you've got to keep it moving all the time with more virtue, more goodness, more practice. You understand?
I do. Thank you very much, Venerable.
Good, Christine. Thanks, sweetheart. Lucia and Alexandra, yes, please talk to me.
Yes, hi. Is there a specific practices to develop wisdom and clairvoyance? Not just
Of
one,
course,
but
yes, they're all there in the Buddhist teachings. Of course, they're all there. Exactly. Of course they are.
Yeah.
Yes, they're all there in the whole Buddhist path. Exactly. But they're not in isolation. You can't just, you know, you hear Einstein tell you about equals, you know, about relativity. You can't just go study relativity in isolation. You have to study all the other things that go with it, like maths and algebra and all the rest. So yes, they're all part of the Buddhist practice. Of course, they're all there. Absolutely.
okay, is it good to practice the karma extinguish practice?
What,
so
darling?
we can, is it
What did you
good
say?
for us
Is it what?
practice the karma extinction, practice for extinguishing, to make the practice to vanish the karma, some practice to vanish the karma and help this.
Yes, absolutely. Purification practice is a very powerful practice, a very necessary one. It's a major part of our daily practice as Tibetan Buddhists. Absolutely, there is. Yes, very powerful. It's part of our daily practice to purify the negative karma and the obstacles that prevent things from being successful. Definitely, yes. So if you,
okay.
I can send one to the center and you can get it on the, you know, you can, or you email me if you like, and I can send it to you. If you'd like to email me, are you there? Where are you?
Yes.
If you'd like to email me, my name, Robina Courtin, email me, robinacourtin@mac.com, M-A-C. I will send you the practice, definitely.
Okay, thank
Or you can ask for my email address at the center there. Yeah?
you. Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
sweetheart. So, okay, now what about Samuel's question again? Let's
Okay,
try again
Venerable,
with
I think
Samuel.
I have his question. Let me try my best. So his question is that one way for things to end is like you gave the example of that relationship. Things can end like you are together one moment and you're not together one moment, right? Now things can also end. You could be together and it's still not fun anymore and it's suffering still. Like things don't have to end for the joy in it to end. There is subtle impermanence, he says.
I'm even more confused. Even more confused. I'm sorry.
Like
Can't
you were
understand.
giving an example of that relationship of that lady who you were saying that they will stay together till they're 80.
I understand the example, but I don't understand the question. I
So-
don't understand the question.
So
he
his-
needs
Try
to
again.
try again, Samuel. Say it
Okay.
more simply, please.
So I understand how the fact that things end help us remove attachment, but
Wait,
some
just stop,
things.
stop, wait a minute, stop. Why
Yeah.
do you assume that? No, who told you that? I don't think that's true at all. You've got to make it your practice. Usually when things end, we get even more attachment. So I disagree with that. It's not true. If you're practicing, and your
Yes.
beautiful relationship changes, you know, you might learn about attachment if it's a struggle. So that's
Okay.
one point. So what's the question?
So, but how does thinking about the fact subtle impermanence help us with attachment, not coarse?
Well,
I mean,
subtle impermanence is because you're dealing with reality, sweetheart. If you're changing your mind at a subtle level and you're realizing the reality at a subtle level that virtually almost leading you to realizing emptiness, well, of course you're going to give up attachment. Attachment is a gross, gross, gross fantasy. So if you're working at a subtler level and recognizing things changing moment by moment, you're almost going to start to realize there's nothing to be attached to. That's the point.
Can you explain the logic? I don't understand the logic of
Well,
it.
you better study it. All I can do in 1 hour is give you a few words, Petal. The rest is up to you.
Okay.
There's no time in 5 minutes to explain subtle impermanence. I can say in general, Liz, Buddha's telling us our minds have many, 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 many layers of misconceptions. Each of them is quite specific, Samuel, but they all are leading to the most primordial misconception that everything has an intrinsic nature. So if you work on the delusion that things are not changing moment by moment, you're loosening the grip of all the delusions a little bit. Every time you give up attachment and give up anger, you're chipping away at all the delusions. They all help each other. So, you know, as you let go of grasping impermanence, let go of being attached, let go of being angry, let go of being arrogant, let go of being jealous, if you grow compassion, grow kindness, you're gradually, incrementally lessening delusions and therefore suffering and growing virtues and therefore happiness. It's an incremental, gradual process. And they're all utterly linked to each other, Samuel. That's the logic.
Okay.
All right? Think about that.
Venerable, there's
What
a
else?
question in the chat, which could be the last question perhaps of the
Yeah,
session.
go.
So the person is saying that I love my husband, but I'm also attached to him. What
Of course,
can I
join the universe, folks. You don't realize, you don't give up attachment until practically you realize emptiness. So join the universe. Then,
So the person is basically saying, what can I do to have less attachment to my husband?
sweetie pie, you're asking me how do I distinguish between a weed and a flower? How do I distinguish between love and attachment? You've got to study botany, baby. That's my answer. I'm not trying to be cheap with you. That's what Buddhism is. All I can give you in this talk is a little flavor of what Buddha's saying. The rest is up to us to go into it in more depth. So the key thing is to distinguish between, like I said at the very beginning to Abelardo, the key thing to understand, and if we don't understand this, we don't understand Buddhism. And most of us don't study it, and this is why we don't understand Buddhism. Just being a nice person and taking refuge and saying a few mantras is not being a Buddhist. You've got to understand his model of the mind. And the key point, that the more we understand this key point, the more all your questions will be answered, all of you. That we have to distinguish between the deluded, neurotic, I-based, fear-based, nonsense, misconception, delusional states of mind, and the positive, virtuous, reasonable, valid states of mind. There's a massive difference, and this is quite hard to see. First, have to know it intellectually, and then slowly through our own meditation and experience can we distinguish the difference. So in our relationship with our husband or our baby or our friend, love and attachment, as far as we are concerned in our culture, we conflate them. We literally think they're the same thing. In modern psychology, this is why Abelardo's question was so interesting. You know, we conflate these. And for the Buddha, there's an utter distinction between them, which is quite a shock. Because in our culture, we don't really make this clear distinction. We never would say in modern psychology or neuroscience that some states of mind are negative or neurotic or deluded. That seems too judgmental for us. We give them equal status with the other ones, love and compassion and intelligence. But there's a qualitative difference experientially between these two categories of states of mind. This is the key to success. And it comes slowly. We have to study the model of the mind and then learn first intellectually the difference. And then we will understand to start experientially identifying them. And then slowly we'll understand Buddha's view, which is that we can rid the mind utterly of all the delusions. I mean, this is a shocking concept in neuroscience and psychological terms, that some states of mind are not intrinsic to who we are. They're not integral. They're not, they say that they're adventitious. This is a very shocking concept. This is Buddha's radical finding, that there are some conceptual states of mind, attachment, aversion, jealousy, all these, that do not have any basis in reality and can be utterly annihilated from our mind. That's exactly what Buddha's telling us. It's quite a shocking concept. We need to understand it by studying Buddha's teachings, studying the Buddhist model of the mind. That's my answer, really. Well, there's no quick fix, but it's possible. But I'll give you one little clue. If it feels uncomfortable, then you know it's attachment. If you feel spacious and open and kind, then you know it's love. That's a good start. If it's uncomfortable, you can guarantee it's a delusion. When the mind is constricted and grasping, that's attachment. When your mind is open and spacious and delighting in your husband's happiness, that's love. But even still, it's very hard to distinguish, you know. But this is our job. This is our job. Christine, one final question.
Thank you, Venerable. My question is, so because of health conditions that you're dealing with and that you know you have a limited amount of time,
Yes.
what is the best way to enter, what is the best path to take to enter into that training and understanding?
I think that first of all, we've got the two levels of practice, Christine. I think we need the basic, you know, it's a bit like asking, what if I've only got a limited amount of time, how much should I devote to tennis? Well, honey, there are two things you need to do to play tennis. You need to do practices that will enable you to be fit enough to even pick up a tennis racket and play with a ball. So there's the actual playing of tennis, and then there's the practices that enable you to play tennis. So if you like, you could argue that you're having a daily practice of saying a few mantras, invoking the presence of the Buddhas and getting their support in your life, which can be very powerful. Then the actual practice of playing tennis is learn to see your mind. But first, control your speech, then control your mind and observe your mind. Become your own therapist, like Lama Yeshe says. So a practice would be a bit of mantra, a bit of prayer to give you some courage to connect you to the Buddhas, and then to know your mind and observe your mind every day and do a bit of reading. I would say that's it, really. Go from there.
Thank you very much, Venerable.
All right, sweetheart. Well, an hour has gone like a dream, hasn't it? That's it. Any more questions?
So much.
We're done.
It was amazing. This is amazing, like always. Thank you so much, Venerable.
Okay.
I really apologize for those internet connections we were facing. We'll make sure that it won't
You see,
happen
things
next
are
time.
impermanent. The proof of the pudding is right there. We didn't expect it. So then, and this is the point. This is the other point. When you don't expect something to change because you're attached to the outcome, that's why anger comes. But if you know that things are impermanent and you're not so attached to it, you won't get angry when it changes. That's a really good practice, okay? Too late, Adriana. Next week, darling. Okay.
Thank you, Venerable.
All right, sweethearts. That's a good piece of advice. Remember that one. Okay, darlings. Much love. Next week. Bye.
Thank you, Venerable. Yes.
Thank you, Venerable Robina.